after a very, very long time away from making videos, Lisa and I have been reunited. Yeah. And so we're back to doing videos. Yay! And I know in the last video we said we were going to do Little Mermaid, but we tried that and...
we were on page 5 after like 20 minutes.
Yeah, after 20 minutes we were still on page 5 of 13 pages. So we decided not to do the Little Mermaid, but I'm going to post a link to the page where you can read it for yourself if you want. You won't have Lisa's happy little side comments, but it will still be a story to read. So instead we're going to do The Brave Tin Soldier, which is an equally sorrowful story that Lisa's never read, right?
I've never read this.
Never read. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't know anything about it.
Ooh.
I've heard of the title.
Okay, so you want to say hi to your family?
Hello, family! Yeah.
We found out Lisa's family watches this.
Yeah, so I'll start posting on my Facebook statuses when we post new ones of these, so you'll know. Okay, so this is The Brave Tin Soldier by Hans Christian Andersen in 1838. Okay. There were once 25 tin soldiers who were all brothers, for they had been made out of the same old tin spoon. Interesting. They shouldered arms and looked straight before them and wore a splendid uniform, red and blue. The first thing in the world they ever heard were the words, "Tin soldiers," uttered by a little boy who clapped his hands with delight when the lid of the box in which they lay was taken off. They were given for him a birthday present, and he stood at the table to set them up. The soldiers were all exactly alike, excepting one, who had only one leg. Oh, he had been left to the last, and then there was not enough of the melted tin to finish him, so they made him stand firmly on one leg, and this caused him to be very remarkable. The table on which the tin soldier stood was covered with other playthings, but the most attractive to the eye was a splendid little paper castle. Through the small windows of the rooms could be seen, in front of the castle, a number of the little trees surrounded a piece of looking-glass, which was intended to represent a transparent lake. Swans made of wax swam on the lake, and were reflected in it. All this was very pretty, but the prettiest of all was a tiny little lady, who stood at the open door of the castle. She also was made of paper, and wore a dress of clear muslin. Muslin?
Muslin.
I've never heard of muslin.
It's type fabric.
There you go. With a narrow blue ribbon over her shoulders, just like a scarf. In front of these was fixed a glittering tinsel rose, as large as her whole face. The little lady was a dancer, and she stretched out both her arms, and raised one of her legs so high that the tin soldier could not see it at all, and he thought that she, like himself, had only one leg. That is the wife for me, he thought. Oh! But she is too grand, and lives in a castle, while I only have a box to live in, 25 of us all together. That is no place for her. Still, I must try and make her acquaintance. Then he laid himself at full length on the table behind a snuff box that stood upon it, so that he could peep at the little delicate lady who continued to stand on one leg without losing her balance. When evening came, the other tin soldiers were all placed in the box, and the people of the house went to bed. Then the playthings began to have their own games together, to pay visits, to have sham fights, and to give balls. The tin soldiers rattled in their box. They wanted to get out and join the amusements, but they could not open the lid. The nutcrackers played at leapfrog, and the pencil jumped about the table. There was such a noise that the canary woke up and began to talk, and in poetry too. Only the tin soldier and the dancer remained in their places. She stood on tiptoe with her legs stretched out, as firmly as he did on his one leg. He never took her eyes off her for even a moment. The clock struck 12, and with a bounce, up sprang the lid of the snuff box, and instead of snuff, there jumped up a little black goblin, for the snuff box was a toy puzzle. "Tin soldier," said the goblin, "don't wish for what does not belong to you." But the tin soldier pretended not to hear. "Very well, wait till tomorrow then," said the goblin. I don't think this is going to turn out well. When the children came in the next morning, they placed the tin soldier into the window. Now, whether it's the goblin who did it, or the drought, it's not known, but the window flew open, and out fell the tin soldiers, heels over head, from the 3rd story onto the street beneath. It was a terrible fall, for he came head downwards, his helmet and his bayonet stuck in between the flagstones, and his one leg up in the air. The servant maid and the little boy went downstairs directly to look for him, but he was nowhere to be seen, although once they nearly trod upon him. If he had called out, "Here I am," it would have been all right, but he was too proud to cry out for help while he wore a uniform. Presently it began to rain, and the drops fell faster and faster, till there was a heavy shower. When it was over, two boys happened to pass by, and one of them said, "Look, there's a tin soldier. He ought to have a boat to sail in." So they made a boat out of newspaper, and placed the tin soldier in it, and sent him sailing down the gutter, while two boys ran by side of it, and clapped their hands. Good gracious, what large waves arose in that gutter, and how fast the stream rolled on, for the rain had been very heavy. The paper boat rocked up and down, and turned itself round sometimes so quickly that the tin soldier trembled. Yet he remained firm, his countenance did not change. He looked straight before him, and shouldered his musket. Suddenly the boat shot under a bridge, which formed a part of a drain, and then it was as dark as a tin soldier's box. "Where am I going now?" thought he. "This is the black goblin's fault, I am sure. Ah, well, if the little lady were only here with me in the boat, I should not care for any darkness." Suddenly there appeared a great water rat who lived down the drain. "Have you a passport?" asked the rat. "What?"
Just continue.
"Give it to me at once." But the tin soldier remained silent and held his musket tighter than ever. The boat sailed on, and the rat followed it. How he did gnash his teeth and cry out to the bits of wood and straw, "Stop him! Stop him! He has not paid toll, and he has not shown his pass!" But the stream rushed on stronger and stronger. The tin soldier could already see the daylight shining where the arc ended. Then he heard a roaring sound, quite terrible enough to frighten the bravest man. At the end of the tunnel, the drain fell into a large canal over a steep place, which made it as dangerous for him as a waterfall would be to us. He was too close for it to stop, and so the boat rustled on, and the poor tin soldier could only hold himself as stiffly as possible, without moving an eyelid, to show that he was not afraid. The boat whirled for 3 or 4 times, and then filled with water to the very edge. Nothing could save it from sinking. Now he stood up his neck in water, while deeper and deeper sank the boat, and the paper became soft and loose with wet, till at last the water closed over the soldier's head. He thought of the elegant little dancer whom he should never see again, and the words of the song sounded in his ears. "Farewell, warrior, ever brave, drifting onward to thy grave." It's a little depressing. A little bit. Okay. Then the paper boat fell to pieces, and the soldier sank into the water, and immediately afterwards was swallowed up by a great fish. Oh, how dark it was inside the fish! A great deal darker than in the tunnel, and narrower too, but the tin soldier continued firm, and lay at full length, shouldering his musket. Woof! The fish swam to and fro, making the most wonderful movements, but at last he became quite still. After a while, a flash of lightning seemed to pass through him, and then the daylight approached, and a voice cried out, "I declare, here's the tin soldier!" The fish had been caught, taken to the market, and sold to the cook, who took him into the kitchen and cut him open with a large knife. She picked up the soldier and held him by the waist between her finger and thumb, and carried him into the room. They were all anxious to see this wonderful soldier who had traveled about inside a fish, but he was not at all proud. They placed him on the table, and how many curious things to happen in the world! There he was in the very same room from the window of which he had fallen. There were the same children, the same playthings, standing on the table, and the pretty castle with the elegant little dancer at the door. She still balanced herself on one leg and held up the other. She was as firm as himself. It touched the tin soldier so much to see her that almost swept him to tears. But he kept them back. He only looked at her, and they both remained silent. Presently one of the boys took up the tin soldier and threw him into the stove. He had no reason for doing so, therefore it must have been the fault of the black goblin who lived in the snuff-box. The flames lighted up the tin soldier as he stood. The heat was very terrible, but whether it proceeded from the real fire or from the fire of love, he could not tell. Then he could see that the bright colors were faded from his uniform, but whether they had been washed off during his journey or from the effects of his sorrow, no one could say. He looked at the little lady, and she looked at him. He felt himself melting away, but he still remained firm with his gun on his shoulder. Oh my God! Suddenly the door of the room flew open, and a draught of air caught up in the little dancer. She fluttered like a sylph right into the stove by the side of the tin soldier when, oh my god, it was instantly in flames and was gone! After all of that he went through, she freaking died! Oh my god, the tin soldier melted down to a lump! On the next morning, when the maidservant took the ashes out of the stove, she found him in the shape of a little tin heart! Oh my god! But of the little dancer, nothing remained but the tinsel rose, which was burnt black as a cinder. Oh my god. That's so depressing. I'm gonna cry.
Wait, are you crying?
He went through so much, and then he just died because the stupid little retard boy threw him in the oven. Oh my god. Oh, that's terrible. It's like little Despero. He's like, I'm a gentleman, and he's all cute to the little princess, and he would never be with because he's a mouse and she's a person. Oh god.
This has been story time with Lisa. I don't know what we're gonna do next week because I'm gonna stop promising stories in case they turn out to be too long, like The Little Mermaid. But we'll Cinderella. If it's not too long, Cinderella. Bye.
Bye.